station exactly?
Sure.
Okay. In favor of exploring for oil and natural gas offshore in Virginia. And, oh, I'm sorry. I tend to wander. You've got me pegged down. Anyway, you'll have to stay put as well. But I read your biography last night. Robert sent it to me. It's short, just a page. But I thought you're a very remarkable fellow because you've been, you've made businesses that have served people around the world, and you were in the House of Delegates. You're a real Jeffersonian citizen, and I really appreciate the fact that you've come to join us today to discuss offshore drilling. Thank you.
Okay, let's hear it for Mike.
And you can be pretty brutal in the morning with your guest here. I have to keep that in mind. I'm glad you didn't read too much. Well, folks, good morning. I thank you for letting me be here with you today. I'd be remiss not to mention, obviously, what we're all seeing with the news right now. This is a tough day, a tough week for the Commonwealth of Virginia, certainly for our governor. I served with then Senator Ralph Northam when I was in the House of Delegates. We worked together on things I would have never imagined what we're seeing today, but I do pray for him and his family, and I pray for the Commonwealth. We've been in the news. I'm very proud of Virginia, and we've been in the news for some things that, frankly, some stains we've been really working to get rid of for decades, if not generations. So anyway, a sad day for the Commonwealth, but we're going to focus on today why I'm here to talk to you, which is with the Explore Offshore Coalition, which I am chair of. In order to tell you, though, why I'm involved with this organization, I want you to know a little bit more about my background, because I think it'll start making sense. You mentioned you'd read the bio, and it talks a little bit about my company. At 27, I started Control Automation Technologies Corporation. That was just over 30 years ago now. This is home for me, but I started actually in North Carolina. It just happened to be where I'd landed at that time. And some of the things we did is we designed and installed process control systems for manufacturers. We did it for companies throughout the Southeast, across the U.S., Tunisia, Hong Kong, Jamaica, Panama. The Jamaica one I had to kind of check on a couple of times to make sure that one was going well. But we had these opportunities to go from very early stages with mostly manufacturing facilities that were planning either adding on to a facility or in some cases building new facilities. And I got a unique opportunity to get a front row seat to a lot of decision making that was going on about the types of processes that were being built, the type of equipment they use, even in some opportunities to the location, site locations where they would put these facilities. So I had a unique opportunity to hear and see what a lot of the things that companies were looking for when they were making the decision to invest in where they would build a facility, where they would create jobs. In my own business, I own, again, I Control Automation, but I started another company behind that, that's Cat Lab, which is the Control Automation Technologies, that we service precision test equipment for Department of Defense, for manufacturers, for biotech, pharmaceutical, all over the world. And I've got laboratories in Virginia and in North Carolina. So I have the opportunity on a daily basis to compare Virginia to North Carolina as far as how easy it is to do business, how expensive it is to do business. And so this is a type of experience that I carried with me that I wanted to go to Richmond and share. So I went in the House of Delegates. If you were to follow anything that I did, you'd see it's pretty much related to really two topics, and that's the business environment and workforce education. I do a lot with the community college system here in Virginia, and those two go hand in hand. Let's create the jobs, let's train people for those jobs, and that's really had been my focus in the General Assembly. I always, and this is with the Libertarian Party here, I think you would concur to this, that when an individual is dependent on anybody, especially on government, for their basic necessities, that individual's giving up something. You give up a lot of freedom when you depend on another entity for your survival. And that's always been my focus there, is let's take people and give them opportunities government doesn't create the jobs. We certainly create the environment that will encourage job growth. And then let's make sure that there's a education system in place so that we can train folks to be able to fill those jobs. And that really has been my focus. And with jobs being such a focus, you would think with the news today, with our economy across the country, I'd be pretty content with the way things are. If you look at unemployment rate, we're at record lows in unemployment across this nation, and it goes across all demographics: black, white, Hispanic, male, female, you name it. Every sector of the country is benefiting from the job growth we've had. One of the challenges, though, is when you take those numbers on a national level and you break them down into really break them down at the state level. There's been a lot of growth, and you may be surprised on where a lot of this growth has been. Excuse me reading the notes, but there's a number of states here I wanted to mention to you. There's Texas, New Hampshire, Washington, New York, Connecticut, Ohio, and Utah. They now have the fastest growing GDP in the nation. Each one of those are experiencing 4% or higher. Manufacturing's booming. You hear about manufacturing coming back. Indiana, Wisconsin, Iowa, Arkansas, Michigan, Alabama, Ohio, Mississippi, Kansas, and South Carolina. Every one of those states, manufacturing growth is at 12% or more. That's pretty huge. But one thing you probably noticed is that I never mentioned Virginia in either one of those stats. When I first started putting this presentation together back last fall, Virginia wasn't in the top 20 of either one of those categories. Today, we're not in the top 25 of either one of those categories. Folks, we've got some work to do here in Virginia. I know the economy in the nation as a whole is doing well. Virginia's got some work to do. And that's not to say we don't have our pockets of success. Obviously, Northern Virginia's got their big new employer that we're only paying a few $100 million to come to Virginia and create some jobs. But there are sectors and there are announcements with some expansions and some new businesses here. But it pales in comparison against many places in the country. In Hampton Road, well, I'll actually go back. We know where a lot of this growth comes from, right? It's federal spending. Virginia benefits greatly from federal spending. Last year, $39 billion was injected into our economy from Virginia. I was at, this Monday, I was speaking to the Virginia Manufacturing Association at the Capitol because they were going out to talk to legislators about bills that were important to the manufacturing industry. And the CEO of VDEP, the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, was there, and he was speaking, and he and Brett Vassy, the president or the CEO of the Virginia Manufacturing Association, were having a conversation, and it came out that if it were not for federal spending, Virginia's economy would be akin to Mississippi's. Now look, Mississippi's a great place. I love it. I've got customers there. One of them's a catfish rendering plant. It stinks, but the people are nice. It's a great place. But think about that. Virginia's economy being alongside Mississippi's if we didn't have that federal spending. And you know, states, just like when I talk about people being dependent on government, Virginia's pretty dependent on the federal government for its survival right now. Narrow that down to Hampton Roads. Many of you are probably familiar with the Hampton Roads, the ODU economic report, or they call it the state of the region. And they go out once a year, and there's a couple professors from ODU, and they give talk about where our economy is, where it's going, and in the region of Hampton Roads. There was a lot of concerning information that was offered in this last one. The one ray of hope that they were pretty happy about was that, and this was this past fall, Virginia has now reached the employment levels that we had in 2007. Isn't that exciting? Come on, folks. That's great news, isn't it? We're touting the fact that our economy, or our jobs, are back to levels of 11 or 12 years ago. That is pretty sad. And it should tell you something that we really do have some work to do. Yesterday in the Virginia Pilot, I read a paper, and yes, I do occasionally read the Virginia Pilot. I read the paper, I read an article, and it said that Hampton Roads' economy is 40% Department of Defense spending. Now, folks, I love our military, and it has been the folks that serve in it and the institutions themselves, but we are too dependent on federal spending. And that just shows you, imagine, and you know it will at some point, you know that the spending will be cut. And it's going to have a huge impact on our kids are already leaving Hampton Roads. I've got a son retired from school right now. He's probably going to Research Triangle Park. From ODU, engineer, there's opportunities down there. That's something from a personal standpoint. So, what do we got to do? We've got to diversify our economy. And the things that when I mentioned things I learned when I was meeting with manufacturers as we were looking to expand, and things that I really focused on when I was in the House of Delegates, really were 5 key areas. And it's 5 key areas I always refer to as these are very important economic factors that companies consider when they're looking to invest and create jobs. The first is if I'm a CEO looking for a place to put my business, does it have fair taxes? Are the regulations reasonable? Does it have the infrastructure my particular business needs? It could be roads, it could be ports, it could be rail, it could be broadband. Does it have an eager workforce and a system in place to train that workforce for the kind of skills that my business would need? And do I have affordable, reliable energy? Now, I could spend the whole morning talking about any one of those subjects you wanted to, but I'm here today to talk about the last one. And again, mention is with the offshore exploration. You're certainly, I assume, aware that the Department of Interior has identified areas off of the Virginia's coast and all up and down the East Coast that will be made available for lease. And the first step in this lease is to do mapping, seismic mapping, to do exploration to see what resources actually lie out off the coast, all up and down the East Coast. We're dealing today with 30-year-old technology. It's been that long since we've gone out and done any real mapping, and we think we've got some pretty good information on what is in the general area out there. We think, for the most part, that it's natural gas, more so than oil. We think that most of it lies 50, 60, 70 miles off the coast, off the shelf. We don't know exactly where it would be best to pursue it, but we've got this general information, which is when I'm going to get in a minute about definition of resources versus reserves. But in order to do that, we're using, or want to use, modern day technology, which is significantly advanced of what we had 30 years ago, to give us very crystal clear pictures of where these resources may lie, exactly what they are, and what the best way is to pursue it. Now, there's a lot of opposition to all doing exploration. I frankly think a lot of it is we don't want to know what's there, because if we know it's there, then there may be some effort to try to go get it. And I get it. So they're trying to stop it in its tracks. And you hear things like, well, this seismic mapping is dangerous, it's blast, it's killing whales. And we can talk more about it in the Q&A period if you want to, but even an appointee for BOEM, which is the Bureau of Ocean and Energy Management, came out and said it in congressional testimony. After over $50 million of research with universities, the government, private sector, they can't document any case where that's actually happening. But you're going to hear it and you're going to see it repeated in the papers. They're going to say we can't do this because we'll be in the way of the Department of Defense, that our military can't operate if we've got these boats going back and forth trailing essentially ultrasound arrays. But the Department of Defense is part of the approval process of this. They're working hand in hand with the Department of Interior to make sure that whatever is done complies with what the military needs as far as its ability to operate. And they will have veto power over any final plans that would go in and do anything beyond this point. So those are things you're going to hear again and again, but they're just not true. What we want to do, as I mentioned before, is take those resources and turn them into reserves. So resources mean know what's out there. We don't know much more than that. Reserves means we know where it is, what it is, how with today's technology we could best pursue it. And also that becomes reserves. Now think about the implication, even if we never went further than that and actually did production, but just knowing what's out there and having these energy reserves, what does that do for us? First thing is think about from national security. I would challenge anyone here to name one major conflict in modern times that didn't involve one entity trying to stop the other from having access to energy. World War II, what we did with Japan. The Iraq Gulf War, when they were going out and burning up these rigs. Iran threatening to close off the straits to cut off oil to the rest of the world. Even most recently with the death of the journalist in Saudi Arabia, when they were looking like there was going to be some repercussions, what did they say? We're going to make sure that the world's paying $200 a barrel of oil. Those are threats all the time, and you can imagine what that would do to our economy. Do you remember when oil was $140 a barrel, what it did to our economy? Nearly $5 at gas pumps here, much more at other places across the country. Those are threats we're concerned about, but how benign do those threats start getting when we realize, and the rest of the world realizes, we've got huge reserves, not resources, reserves that we're ready to tap if needed. That offers significant strength from a national security standpoint. Think about economy. Businesses love consistency. They love assurances. If we've got energy off the coast, they look for, I mentioned the last of the 5 items I mentioned was affordable, reliable energy. That gives some security to companies that may want to invest here, that look, there's an opportunity here that if everything goes south, we have an opportunity because we got reserves right here off the coast of Virginia. But it's not only that when you start talking about manufacturing. Think about the number of products that utilize components that come from energy, that come from oil and natural gas. Diapers, virtually anything that's plastic that you'll ever see, even pharmaceuticals. Every one of those categories have products that are heavily reliant on components that come from oil and natural gas. So there again, talk about that security that relies on those types of raw materials. That again is an enhanced, just by exploring, just by turning resources to reserves, that we can enhance our economy here. Of course, that's just if we explore. If we happen to go out there and we find and confirm what we think to be true, that there are massive, if we were to be in a position to do production, it's estimated that Virginia would gain over 25,000 jobs in the next 20 years, with average pay of $113,000 a year at today's prices, at today's pay rates. Excuse me. That's huge, folks. And when you start talking about parts of Hampton Roads, parts of the state in general, that's good pay. That's a lot of jobs. It's every bit as much as what they're offering up in Northern Virginia, the one we paid hundreds of millions of dollars for. But the oil and natural gas industry isn't asking for a dime. They're just asking permission. We'll just explore, let's see what's out there, and if we think it makes sense, we'll just put a plan together for approval. And there are layer after layer of approvals they have to go through before they'd ever be able to do anything from a production standpoint. So that's one way to diversify the economy. That's one to create the jobs. That's one of the great benefits of that with the jobs. Now, I mentioned these 25,000 jobs paying this well. 60% of those jobs will not require a 4-year degree. Most of them are either a 2-year associate's degree from one of our community colleges, a credential, or an industry credential, or a certificate. Folks, this reaches into communities that the college is out of the question for some folks, and all of a sudden you start talking to them and go, there's an opportunity for you to go in here and get this industry credential and come out making over $100,000 a year. That's significant. That's when we start taking people from being reliant on government and giving them an opportunity to be reliant on themselves. Now, these are all facts that we have stated at us in stats. I had the opportunity in December to go to Louisiana. So I went down to your neck of the woods, and I went down to Port Fourchon, sorry, I can't go with the accent there. I'm stuck with this Carolina, Virginia accent. I can't get rid of it. But with there, I went to New Orleans. I went to a response center for Shell. I went to a community college. I went to an environmental group. I just talked with a number of people. I talked with the Legislative Black Caucus from Louisiana down there. Spent 3 days learning about the impact that industry's had on that region. Without energy, which had been a pretty depressed region, frankly. And I talked to people whose jobs, and I talked to fishermen and crab and other watermen who are coinciding extremely well with the industry being out there. These folks are creating jobs, and when I went out to Port Fourchon, thank you. I'll get with you afterwards so I can say this better, okay? There was business after business after business just lined up just small business. Some of them that were expansions from business that were elsewhere that put facilities there. Some were brand new startup business right there. Thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs as we drove around on this tour bus to look at all these businesses. But not only that, but how do they train the people? I mentioned the community college system. They have a community college or a technical center called Fletcher Technical College there. It was essentially built by the industry. Now, they didn't just build the program and pay to bring in the sample rigs, the model rigs and the instrumentation and all that to train people on. They built the building. And then they went in to neighborhoods that needed us the most, and they gave scholarships to students to get them in, those who could never afford to go to college. And they went through this program and they came out making great money. And I tell you, that it is amazing. It is emotional almost to hear some of these people talk about what this industry has done for their community. And it works hand in hand with the environmental community there. We met with people that were environmental folks you would think be absolutely against the industry, and they're not, because they work so well together. This has been very good for that region. We've got the opportunity to make that very good for us. So, all that comes back to what is the potential there. And it goes back to when I mentioned why I'm supportive of it. It's because it helps take people who are dependent on government, who are willing to sacrifice whatever freedom they have to make sure my food and my housing and all that's provided for them, and gives them an opportunity to pursue what they want to do. And sure, will everybody take up on it? Probably not. But the people who are actually looking out there for an opportunity will have great opportunities if we can see this through. So I would ask you if you have an interest. I do want to mention one other thing too, because this is current, and I was working to kill a bill back Monday of this week. I was in Richmond. We actually killed it last week. I was just following up on it this week. But it was a bill that would have prohibited Virginia from putting any infrastructure whatsoever in along our coastline to support the industry. And we're talking about rigs, if they ever were there, could be 50, 60, 70 miles off our coast or off Carolina, other places. But it would have prohibited us from, and keep in mind what infrastructure is. Infrastructure could be boat docks. Infrastructure could be the fiber optic cable that what I saw when I was in New Orleans, where Shell has this command center, and they now have a duplicate control room on land that's communicating by fiber optic cable to exactly what operators on these rigs are seeing as a safety factor. If they ever have something that's a concern coming up, they have engineers sitting right there watching everything as it happens. That would have been prohibited by this bill. Fortunately, we were able to kill that bill. It would have taken and put Virginia businesses at a disadvantage. You know North Carolina and Maryland would have loved us passing this bill going, all right, Virginia can't have any infrastructure. Our businesses are prohibited from doing that kind of work. This bill is going to come up again next year. So I'd ask you to do a couple of things. First of all, talk to your legislators here. Let them know, don't put Virginia businesses at a disadvantage, number one. Number two is, let's at least go through and turn these resources into reserves so we can see what we've got and we can strengthen our economy, that by itself. And then let's see what proposals get put forward to, if it makes sense, whether now or in the future, to produce. My role out here today is to try to help open that up a little bit to people to realize what we're really talking about. I've not made any commitment. I'm not being paid by the American Petroleum Institute or in my role here at all. It's something that I've been passionate about since I've been an adult. And I want to see us go out there and do this exploration. And there are a lot of challenges to it. So I would ask you to, one is, again, is talk to your legislator, let them know you're supportive of this. Number two is write a letter to the editors, talk to other groups, talk to individuals, keep an open mind, and then you can go on to Explore Offshore, to the website, and you can sign up and be a coalition member as a person or as a business. And I would appreciate you doing that as well. So I'll be happy to take any questions. I really appreciate the opportunity that you all would have me here today. Thank you. George.
Hello. I've got a couple of points. One's sort of on the negative side. The rest of them are supremely positive. The reserve argument almost fails now that we've got hydraulic fracturing. We know all the shale plays are, and we've got over 200 years of identified reserves. I've got two sons. One is a production supervisor for Devon Energy out in Oklahoma City. He did the Powder River area of Wyoming. Now they've got him down on the Delaware, down in western Texas. And what they found down there is just phenomenal. You know, the largest fields they've ever explored. My other son is, well, first son, MIT for his undergraduate. They sent him out for an immediate master's. Navy, of course, paid for it because he was a nuke. They got recruited out of Devon Energy. He went and got his finance MBA out of UNC, and $400 grand a year, and he turns 34 tomorrow.
Wow. Oh my God, that's fantastic.
So my other son works for Schlumberger down in New Orleans. He went to UVA. He wanted to be a neurologist. Then Obamacare came on, and everybody started bailing out of the medical because they didn't want to be a doc in the box. So he got a double degree in biology and chemistry. And then he sort of got engaged to this head cheerleader, who is now his wife, who's an architect. He got saved for a master's in organic chemistry, went down to Tulane and got his another master's in chemical engineering. And Schlumberger is a big German firm. They do wellhead chemistry, as you're well aware. And BP wouldn't have had their deep horizon wouldn't have happened if they've been monitoring their wellhead chemistry properly, because the indications were there for many, many, many years. What I'm talking about is you got a huge brain drain leaving Virginia, because Virginia's got a war on gas. We'd love to have our kids back. Our boys would love to come home. You know, the younger one's wife, the parents are in Herndon. They'd love to have her back, but the jobs aren't here. I was in undergraduate geology. My master's of an MBA was in environmental engineering. I worked with the URS for a while. Then I worked with the Army Corps. Sort of aside, a sewer system out on the Eastern Shore. Nobody wants it. Why? Because when you have a sewer system come in, all the housing developments pop up along it because it's there. Well, the exact same thing happens with a natural gas line. You put a natural gas line, industries know it's there, it's reliable, it's going to stay there for a long, long time, and that's what they're primarily looking for. They will move, and whatever corridor that pipeline goes, that's where your industries and jobs are going to be. Out in Oklahoma, Devon, high school graduates, 5 years in the field, are all making over six figures. And it's, you know, they take them from the reservation, they take them from, you know, underdeveloped areas. It's hard work, but they train them. It's got some risk to it, but you know, it's pretty arduous. But when a high school kid, you know, 5 years in the field, making $125,000, he's got options. What do I want to do? What do I want my family to do? We don't have that here. We got whole pockets of Virginia that have no jobs whatsoever. So that's huge. And Rasul, that idiot with the 1635 bill that got shot down, I mean, they wouldn't even allow fossil fuel backups for the frickin' renewables. Renewables is like having a water utility that you're only going to get water when it rains. I mean, that's what they are. You know, they're intermittent. You know, they're talking about 2 6-megawatt generators for these wind turbines that, you know, are now in trouble. Governor's pet project. Over all across the world, the actual capacity is running around 35%. So you got 12 megawatts of power out there. The best you're going to get is 4 megawatts on an average basis throughout the year. That's $75 million a megawatt. Is that affordable? No.
Most of your points were I would have loved to have been able to sit and share myself, but you're exactly right. You've demonstrated exactly the type of things that I saw in New Orleans.
I will support you.
Well, thank you. And on the one item, just to address the one thing, talking about the reserve part of it is not as important. And granted, the nation is now known to be a net exporter of energy. But keep in mind, not all of that energy is energy that we have the refining capacity for, or is a type of, there's varying grades of oil, for instance. And some is frankly more useful in other parts of the world than it is here. And also it varies how practical it is to tap, or how easy it is, if you will, to tap from one to the other. But I really still believe that having these reserves and knowing what we've got off the coast of Virginia could be an important factor in offering some of this.
Mike, well, we've got, I have to start back in the room. She had her hand up first.
Yes, we have oil now just a barrel, just a little over $51 a barrel, which is very, very low. And at a certain point, there's no cost benefit to bringing up another barrel of oil, especially if it's in a difficult area such as offshore. When we have fracking and shale oil discoveries that are massive, doesn't make a lot of sense as an investor to go offshore now.
Oil and natural gas pricing rises and lowers, and it's driven by a number of factors. No question we have reserves across the nation for various types, as I was mentioning, various types of energy sources, some which are practical for us to use in the U.S., some which, where frankly it makes more sense to provide it to other nations that could use it. Today, you're exactly right, but it wasn't but just a few years ago when oil prices were considerably higher due to a number of world events, due to transportation issues with pipelines here in the U.S. And it may not make sense, and frankly, the industry throttles itself based on that. When does it make economic sense to pursue it? When does it not? By having those reserves available, we know that that's part of the picture that can be played into is now the right time, and if it's not, it's an expensive venture to go out and invest in offshore. There's no question. You said it is.
It's almost too expensive to do our fracking at the present price of a barrel, that we might be forcing ourselves back to getting Saudi oil, whatever's left there.
Well, this is
No way.
Because it is cheaper to get it there.
It is today, perhaps. I don't think it is actually today, but there are timings. There are, I said, a number of sources for energy, but there's a lot of factors that go into play into how expensive a barrel of oil will be, or how much cubic feet of natural gas is. And again, these are decisions that will be made. They know what it costs them to do. They know when it's practical, when it's not.
It's about 50 cents a barrel to pull it out of Saudi desert. And it's about $15 a barrel to frack it. I don't know what it would cost to get it offshore.
Well, when you've got OPEC and other organizations, and you've got world stability issues, I don't want to be reliant on that, though, and that's I think the key.
Mike, we got so many questions this morning. Dr. Tabor?
Well, I'm on board with exploration and eventual development. I think what I want to address is making the case locally for going forward. And a lot of your opposition is not sincere. We hear people screaming, oh, the tourism industry could be destroyed by a once in 50 year spill. No. What the tourism industry is worried about is that it's hard to get somebody to work in your t-shirt shop for minimum wage when they can make $90,000 a year doing laundry for the offshore industry, much less the technical things. And that's trapping that cheap labor supply is a big part of your opposition. I think the way to get over that is to send some people down to Louisiana with cameras and ask the people there who've lived with the oil industry for 60 years if they would want it to go away.
Right.
And they will think you are insane for even asking the question. So again, getting the word to the people who have lived with the industry and put that out up here. Let the fishermen in Louisiana talk to the fishermen here. And sadly, for my sister who lives on Grand Isle, it doesn't keep the tourists away.
It does not. And what you just said is everything that I had read and had seen stats on until I went there in December and saw it. And I saw it firsthand, and I talked with those people. And I talked to, like I said, the Legislative Black Caucus from Louisiana, who is you know, in generally are going to be supporting or be Democrats. And there's a lot of money coming from across the country to the Democrat Party to fight any advancements in energy. Growth of any type of fossil fuels whatsoever. But they were saying, look, this is too important for our region. We've seen the benefits of this, and we're going to support this. And it was really amazing to see how broad the support was across every sector of folks that I talked to.
Okay, I have Mike and then Tom, Bill, Den.
I'm a very simple guy. Who's going to pay for the exploration?
The industry's paying for
Okay,
the
so it's not going to cost us a
by the federal
dime.
government.
So as far as the cost of what it's going to bring out of the ground, that's not significant.
Right.
Okay.
Just so you know, there's like 5 companies that would be out there, private industries that would be out there doing the mapping.
Right. I just wanted to make sure that we all understood the fact that it's not going to cost us anything.
No.
Well, this is not government dollars we're spending. This is just us saying, like, it's okay for you guys to look as long as you don't hurt the environment, right?
That's right.
Okay. And my other thing is when you're talking about hurting the pool of employees, I've been involved in the industry down there. That's nobody would even consider that. We can find people from all over the world that want to come down here and work at the beach. There's no big head up there that's saying we have to maintain our pool of slaves so that they can't go out and make $100,000 a year. That's not germane. He'll tell you I used to be a slumlord and I used to rent to the people that would come in, the exchange students. They don't come here for $100,000 a year jobs. They come here to hang out at the beach and have a good time. That's what that's all about.
Tom V. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah. Den Black. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
You had, no, it's Bill. I'm sorry. You had a question, Bill.
Well, I have a question that there wasn't very long ago that you were talking about throttling the Saudis could throttle our industry as soon as it became apparent that we were going to start looking for stuff again. They would turn open the spigot and drop the price and then put people out of business. And it's my understanding that now, these days, and it's probably just clever financing or insurance products or something. It's almost impossible for the Saudis to do that anymore, or anyone else, OPEC, anyone else. Do you have something to say about that?
As far as their ability to control overall world pricing, certainly it's diminished considerably over the years, especially as the U.S. has made tremendous advancements. We're talking about fracking and with so many other opportunities to be self-reliant. But there are still, just like when I mentioned some of the threats that we've had before, withholding energy to other nations outside of the United States can also be damaging to the economy in the United States. So it's not just, you can't just think about, all right, what we have here and we've got enough to keep the price going, doesn't matter. You see every challenge also that we have here every time we want to run a pipeline from, this part of the state truly needs more natural gas. And they're fighting with everything from tree sitters to court cases to stop that pipeline from coming here. Transportation from overseas, those are costs and those are things that can be disrupted. There's a number of factors. Are we in a position that we were in the 70s where we were totally dependent on? Absolutely not. But that doesn't mean that we're totally immune to world affairs.
Eric Ray.
I thought there were more questions in front of me. I kind of wanted to piggyback on what Dr. Tabor said. Well, during the city council elections, they had a question that was asked by the Hotel Restaurant Association at the oceanfront, and they asked your response on offshore drilling. And I'm saying drill, baby, drill. I think it's a good idea. One of the hotel association, one of the hotel owners called me early one morning, took me to the cross. Eric, you don't want to be on the side of that, and he gave all the different reasons on how it's going to hurt. And I said, well, if they're going way out to shore, further out, how would it impact? Well, some of the stuff get impacted. And Don Tabor the light just came on as to why they don't want that. Because you take a look at it, I'm not saying that it's all about the younger people, but it is a big industry that will attract people here, and they can make good money by working out there as opposed to working at the oceanfront. So I kind of disagree with my dear friend over here. But if you look at it objectively, I think that's the kind of reason why they don't want that, because everything that's at the oceanfront is pretty much Bruce. I don't know if you know a lot about this area, but it's all Bruce Thompson run, Bruce Thompson subsidized, Bruce Thompson Kingdom, Magic Kingdom down the oceanfront. So for that to actually happen, come into fruition, and for it to be successful, you would bring in a lot of people who quite aren't built by Bruce Thompson. So I kind of wanted to, kind of piggyback on what he says, and the area. I mean, it's a big area, and I don't know whether the restaurant owners or some feel that that their power will be slipping away once they start drilling and once you start having to, people start making a good living. I mean, you tell me.
Well, it's the economy in general. By boosting the economy and creating more jobs. First of all, you mentioned the hotel, motel associations, the restaurants. I mean, these folks that come here to work, folks that can now afford to go out for nice dinners, who's going to benefit from that? A lot of these businesses that are here right now, and look, I'm a small business guy. I get it, and I'm going to fight for small business, but I think what I've seen and what I saw down in Louisiana, this is an opportunity to help small businesses, to create new small businesses, take people who would love to start a business and just don't know how or where to do it, and it'll open up those kinds of opportunities. So when the economy flourishes,
Everybody.
hospitality flourishes with it.
That's right.
So
That's what I would think
great
too.
opportunities there.
Diana Howard?
Okay, I may have missed it, but did you say how you were going to be doing this exploration? What technology you're going to be
The
using? Is
technology-
it seismic testing? Because I heard a lot about that
It is
on the
seismic
internet.
mapping.
And what is the effect of that? Is there
All right,
any
well,
danger to doing
I'll
that?
try to condense it so we don't go roll on with it. Seismic mapping is essentially like an ultrasound. Is they're sending a signal, in this case it's air blast, and they shoot to the surface, and then it's able to penetrate below as far as sound waves that come back, and these rays that are towed behind the boats, they receive that. It's not unlike going to get an ultrasound of your heart. It's sending signal back. It comes back and it paints a picture, and it shows them. It shows them crevices. It shows them various layers.
So there's absolutely no danger.
There's no danger. You'll hear folks talk. Well, the blast they affect marine life. That they kill whales. And as I mentioned before, an Obama appointee who was heading BOEM, Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, testified just a couple of years ago before Congress on this issue, and they had worked the government, universities, private sector. Spent over $50 million researching to see what impact is this having on life. Is it really killing whales? And he came back, and his quote in there, we could document no evidence, or there's no document evidence that is happening whatsoever. So that's the sound that you're talking about. Otherwise, there's no chemicals being used. There's nothing like that at all.
Dan Black.
Yes, I'm all in for all of this. I'm an engineer, and of course, the problem also, and I advocate you talk to your Congress people and your legislators, your policy makers, but the difficulty there is you also want to say what you're against, okay? And the renewables have the problem, of course, of being three things. They're diffuse, they're intermittent, and they're very expensive, okay? So this man who proposed this recently is clueless. The problem here then, you advocate not only for what you're talking about, you have to tell them what they shouldn't be doing, and they need education about that, because the policymakers, as opposed to us technology people, just basically are clueless, okay? Or they wouldn't put a bill in like that. Exactly. So yeah, there has to be an education of the policymakers.
There does, and that's one of the things I'm trying to do is just go out and educate the public about. I mean, it's hard unless you want to spend a few hours and get a board up here to really do any lectures, and you guys will be like ready for lunch and kick me out. But those are all important factors. I personally am an all of the above guy, but there are certain things that some of the renewables are good for today, and certain that they're not. I'm really a big supporter of further research through our university system, through the private sector, on let's make the renewables more practical. But you're right, you've got transmission issues, you've got storage issues, you've got DC to AC conversion issues, there's a lot of things that go into play. And not to mention, when you see the folks get up and say, we can't do seismic testing off our coast, we should have renewables, you know how they figure out where they're going to put the wind towers? Seismic mapping.
Well, the problem again basically is the people who have the knowledge that we're talking about in technology are dealing with the policymakers who don't know a damn thing about it.
Exactly. That's unfortunate. Boy, we can have a
That's
whole
got to be
conversation
fixed. That's got to be
about
fixed.
The lack of of wide-ranging experience we have in our General Assembly. When I was in there was two of us. It was me and Joe May that had ever done any significant work whatsoever in a manufacturing facility. And so I went to try to talk to people about things that were important to manufacturing. They didn't get it. It's the same thing with this here. We've got to educate legislators. We've got to educate the public.
George?
And the research on the wind turbines are far more damaging to the eco environment than seismic is. I mean, they're getting more and more papers are coming out. They're coming out from Germany. They're coming out from Australia. Wherever they have the offshore turbines, you got whales beaching themselves. It's far more. Seismic happens and it's over.
That's right.
Windmills, forever.
Forever and ever.
And the property value, we put an on-land windmill within a mile of an on-land windmill. Property values generally drop anywhere from 25 to 50%.
One other thing to mention real quick as far as where this would take place is because you've heard I don't want to look out of my hotel window and see an oil rig. We're talking 50, 60 miles out. Because of the curvature of the earth, I don't care how good your eyes are, you could not physically see it.
Would legislators agree with you that the earth is curved?
Well, there are some, that's a good point. I should probably go back and really study some of our legislators. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Leslie will be the last question.
The current that runs by the eastern
Gulf
coast,
Stream,
the Gulf Stream, if there were to be a leak, wouldn't that bypass us because it would go through the
Let
Gulf
me address it
Stream?
from a different way, because I really can't tell you. I mean, I kind of know how the general flow goes, but I can't say what the impact will be. Let me tell you what I did learn. It always comes up in conversations when we're talking about we can't afford another system. Look, that was a horrible industrial disaster. It truly was. But I honestly, even including 3 Mile Island, if you remember what happened a long time ago with the near meltdown there, I do not know of any single industrial, without going into tremendous detail, just it was a series of events. The way they put it is it's like two Swiss cheese that you finally, and every hole had to line up for them to get what happened. But a lot of this was human error, not recognizing some things they they should have recognized, not believing their instrumentation, very much like what happened at 3 Mile Island, and no real redundant backup to someone else watching and helping make those decisions. The other part of it, once it happened, the technology wasn't there. It's the first time that it ever happened, and the technology wasn't there to cap this. And they're scrambling on land now, A, trying to come up with the right technology to do it, and B, how the heck are we going to get it there? Now, the technology is developed. It's sitting there ready to act just like that if ever needed. But that's to respond to. But even to prevent something like this, I mentioned the fiber optic cable. I went into the Shell Command Response Center, and they've got a team of engineers that are on the ground that's being monitored 24/7. They see everything that those operators see out on those rigs, everything. And they can identify things. I mean, these guys that design and build these systems, they can identify things generally faster than the operators ever will. And they have a constant communication going back and forth. Had that been in place, it wouldn't even come close to happening. And now we have it as a standard operating procedure. The technology and the advances that are made since that time, the new regulations that are put in place, I'm one to never say never. I never say never about anything. But I, from my experience working in the industry that I've worked in, I can't imagine how that could ever happen again.
Let's hear it for Mike Watson, coming all the way down here from Williamsburg. Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much. Now, as we close out, announcements from the floor, concerns, whatever. Diana Howard?
Our next Tea Party meeting is this coming Thursday. We switched from Wednesday to Thursday on the 7th, and we have the city auditor doing the Virginia Beach Development Authority's audit, which we were supposed to do last month, but he couldn't, so it's this month. So this Wednesday at 7 o'clock, Marion Manor, which is at what?
Urology, Virginia, it's right at
Clearfield Avenue.
Clearfield Avenue.
across from Haynes. Across from Haynes,
Down on Marion Lane.
St. Gregory's Church.
Yes.
Behind St. Gregory.
Leslie Jones.
I just
One
wanted to
person
say
at a time,
I had
please.
an idea for a speaker that I wanted to make sure that
Sure.
you knew about. That's
Who's that?
He was
Yes,
speaking. He talks about repealing the, what's called certificate of public
Public need,
need.
yes.
And I was really inspired by that. And I think he would be a great speaker for people to understand why that needs to be addressed. And I hope that to be part of that, because this is really an interest of mine.
Great idea. It's capitalism at its finest. We don't need legislative and general assembly telling hospitals how many beds they should or should not have.
Yeah.
Other, yes, sir, Dan.
I happened to be invited to a meeting last night in Chesapeake that involved former Governor George Allen, and they're canvassing the state, him, Allen, and a small crew, to improve awareness of something very important right now, which is an effort to end gerrymandering in Virginia. There's a bill that was actually supported 40-0 in the Senate last week with a plan for fixing the problem, gets you snakes and all this stuff as far as the districts. Now what needs to be done in a nutshell is to contact your House legislators and advocate that a similar bill that passed in the House so that it can go forward. If it doesn't happen in this session, it won't happen for a while, because in order for this eventually to happen and have a plan to fix this, it has to be passed this year, it has to be passed the next session, and then it can go on the ballot as a referendum. So if you miss this year, you miss a long time. So the action item, and I'll send out stuff to you that you can put, is to get your legislators to understand, in the House in particular, they have to support this bill to fix this mess of gerrymandering in Virginia.
Well, did you have a question back? Announcement? Okay, George, announcement?
Yeah, I went up to, Diane and I were up at that Americans for Prosperity Lobby Day up at Richmond this past week, and Nick Freitas is on one of the panels, and he kind of, we got together to explain, the civil asset forfeiture reform bill is dead this year. Again, but it's an election year, and he says, rather than go down on a hard vote, they tabled it because they had all the municipal police departments show up, and they're hard over on keeping the pillage and plunder to keep supplement their budgets. And he says, in an election year, they come out and he says, you even smell of soft on crime or anti-police, and the bill's going to go down hard, and it'll be awful hard to retrieve. He says, they'll bring it up next year, but we really do need to get the public much better information on what civil asset forfeiture it is. It's stealing from the public. There's no charges. There's no convictions. It's based on a police hunch to check your car or whatever, and you're guilty until proven innocent. And if you want to get your stuff back, your stuff goes into a civil court, not a criminal court. So you have to go get your own civil lawyer, and it costs you more to get it back, and they just keep it. And it's all across the country. It's millions and millions of dollars, billions in some states, a year of assets seized from the public, and most of the public, 90% of the public doesn't even know it's going on. So it's dead this year. There's a reason for it, because it's election, and all the Republicans ran away from it as soon as they started being charged with soft on crime.
Thank you, George.
George, isn't there a bill winding its way towards the Supreme Court?
There's one bill at the Supreme Court. They picked the wrong one. There's a federal judge in New Mexico that says it's unconstitutional.
Right.
But that's that district only. The one they picked for the Supreme Court was a drug dealer. They took his $45,000 Land Rover, and because he obviously had enough for sales and distribution. I have no problem if they take his house, his first children, his car, anything he's ever made, his bank accounts, seize everything. That's the cost of doing business if you want to be a drug dealer. So they're going out on
That's if he's found guilty.
basically going overkill, taking more than he had. The Supreme Court decided to take that case. What they really need to do is get some of these cases where the kid that had $10,000 in his luggage because he just sold everything and he's going to start a business out west, TSA sees the money, and they take it, and it's at 85% back to the state, 15% to the feds, and he has to prove he has to go to court to get his money back because he's guilty of something. He shouldn't have that kind of money. Besides, he was black. I mean, this is absurd. These are the rules we have out there.
He's not guilty of anything, his money is.
Yeah.
Right, his money came, but he has to prove that his money didn't come from a bad source, and that's ridiculous.
Well, George, one caveat, and Laura mentioned, you have to be proven guilty. That should be.
No, I mean, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that's what it's supposed to happen.
That's what New Mexico
Yeah.
says. Now you have to be, you have to go to court. And you have to be proven guilty to lose anything. There's only 2 states that have that,
And we're not
Okay.
one.
and we're not one of them.
Diana Howard?
Okay, we have 2 bills that have already passed on well, you think they're not on transportation because they're for raising or imposing taxes on the internet, for online sales. One's SB 1083 and the other one is HB 1722. Both have passed, so they will go to crossover. What they do in the bill is rescind the contingencies in the transportation bill from 2013, which was HB 2313, which said that if we impose those taxes, that the tax on gasoline would go back down to what it was. So it would go to what it was now. It's like 5.1 now. It would go down to 3.5. And the other is that if we impose these taxes, that all that money would go to transportation. So if they're going to do this, we want the money to go to transportation, don't we? So I don't know what the new substitutes that they just put in 1722 are. I haven't gone back and read those yet because I just passed. But if they don't match, they will have to go to conference, right? But if they do match, both of them will go to the floor and cross over. And since everybody, supported them, they'll be supported, and you'll have that. So call your legislators.
Well, Tommy Norman has come out public, I think it was yesterday or Thursday, said he wants those federal tax refunds, so to speak, to come back to the people.
Well, that's
Correct.
that's a different thing.
I
It's a different
understand,
issue.
but it's all has to do with the internet sales tax. So it's maybe different, but it's still part of all these proposals up there as far as spending our tax dollars.
By the way, the Senate bill that passed 40-0 about gerrymandering is SJ 306. Okay, that's the one that's crossing over. SJ 306.
Well, fortunately, we also had the Equal Rights Amendment killed. That was so bad. And I'm sure they'll be coming back again, the equal rights. I don't know of any woman in this room right now who doesn't have the same rights as any man in this room.
That was strict politics. They
Yeah, strict politics.
So they can run against
And the late-term abortion bill as put out by Delegate Tran, of course, that died. But I'm sure they're going to be coming back. I don't know. It's become pretty controversial. And everything else that's going on with our governor, as Mike said at the outset, there's a lot for we folks who live in Virginia to ponder. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for showing up. Sir, I don't believe we got your name in that on our introduction at the beginning. You are?
Marcus Boring.
Marcus, hey, welcome to it. And you are from where?
I'm from Virginia Beach.
Okay.
Just
well,
interested, my first time here.
Good. Okay. And we have one other gentleman. I want to give him a minute to say he's running for the House of Delegates. Introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm James Job. I'm running for House of Delegates District 96, which is in parts of Williamsburg, which is James City in York County. Right now I'm getting signatures to get on the ballot. If anyone's interested in my campaign, please, feel free to reach out to me. Yes?
2 things. One, when your campaign is established, make sure you reach out to BCDL to get a survey done on firearms.
Okay.
And then once you've successfully completed a survey, and I'm sure you'll do great on it since you're standing in this meeting as opposed to the Democrat Party meeting, then you need to come and talk to BCDL PAC.
Okay.
And that's me.
Okay.
Now, you currently are a student at William & Mary?
At Old Dominion.
Old Dominion.
Yes.
And you are majoring in?
Applied mathematics.
Okay. Well, thank you, and we look forward to hearing more about your campaign. And finally, I think Conrad, you had something? Oh, okay.
I
Diana?
was gonna say John Moss has a town hall on Wednesday, and he's not here to tell you, but I don't even know where it is.
Yeah, John
Do you
had.
know where it is?
Well, it'll be going out.
It's at the EMS headquarters.
The EMS headquarters.
EMS headquarters.
6:30?
Where
I
is?
don't know.
They used to be over on Lynn Haven Parkway across from the
Yes, I
post
think
office,
that's correct.
the pink building. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Let's hear it again for Mike Watson coming all the way down here from Williamsburg. Tidewater Libertarian Party, the party of freedom, the party of principle. Have a great weekend, everybody. Go Rams.